set down for third reading forthwith.
Sale and supply of alcohol Rugby World Cup 2015 Extended Trading Hours Amendment Bill, third reading.
I call David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, I move that the sale and supply of alcohol Rugby World Cup 2015 Extended Trading Hours Amendment Bill be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, I've already spoken for 10 minutes on this bill today, so I'm going to keep my remarks fairly brief, except to say I was remiss in acknowledging the very fine officials in the Justice and Electoral Committee who I think did an excellent job in supporting us, and we're very grateful for them. And also to the many submitters, which I have to say were of varying quality. There were a large number of form submissions of a form that was largely inaccurate. In fact, there were some quite helpful and intelligent submissions, such as those from Auckland Council, the Auckland DLC, and also from the Hospitality Association and Local Government New Zealand, which pointed out useful new information that assisted the committee in drafting a very good bill to return to the House. I'd like to thank the members for some of their speeches, particularly pick up on what Chris Bishop said at second reading, that the facts are that if you look at the quantity of alcohol consumed by New Zealanders and the concentration of consumption and the amount of binge drinking and the distribution of that drinking across different age groups, it is a myth that New Zealand is somehow an outlier by international standards and that young New Zealanders have the worst of drinking problems. Quite the opposite is true, and that in a liberalised environment over the last 30 years, alcohol consumption and harm has actually gone down. Those are the facts, and I think they should be recorded for the House, none of which, of course, is incompatible with saying that there are difficulties with alcohol in New Zealand, and we should always ensure to do better. I'd like to thank Peeni Henare for a very good contribution. He said I had a magna doodle and I wasn't aware that the member spoke Latin, but I thank him for that and the rest of his contribution. I want to put on record one matter in regard to this bill. And several people, in what is actually an unparliamentary way, insinuated that the bill was drafted by lobbyists with my help. I can tell the House that there was no such occurrence. I drafted this bill, and did I get on the phone and ask people in my electorate? Yes, I did. And that's one thing I've noticed throughout this debate, is that it's very humbling, Mr Speaker, to have to walk up the driveway in the middle of winter, knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm here to ask you to vote for me." And you learn a lot about what happens in your community, and you become a lot more worldly about the effective policies that we make in this House. That is not to say that there are no very good list MPs, because I've just complimented one of them, but it may also tell us something a little bit about the approach of the Green Party, who of course do not have any. Did I ask, for example, the Hospitality Association for their advice? Of course you would ask an organisation that represented the people who ran the facilities for their view, but this was a drafting very much initiated by me. I'd like to thank one of my staff members who brought it to our attention that the British actually had what we regarded as a piece of model legislation passed for the Soccer World Cup just last year. So I want to put on record the genesis of this bill, and if the people who made those allegations want to repeat those unparliamentary allegations, then I challenge them to do so. But while we're talking about politics, I think one of the things that Chris Bishop touched on was actually the intergenerational aspect of this. And can't you imagine being a new member of Parliament, thrust into the limelight, having been made the leader of your party, and the guy that you beat to be the leader, we've been using a lot of sporting analogies today, Mr Speaker, that guy forces one to do a triple somersault, 3 positions on the same issue in just 2 weeks. And if that is not dissension and difficulty within a party, then I don't know what is. But I repeat what other members have said, that the public will be the judge. I suspect they will conclude that the younger James Shaw had it right, and the internal dissension in the Greens is going to have to be dealt with one way or another. I just wish James luck on that, not only on this bill, but for the integrity of the Greens being able to take one position on a bill for 2 weeks in a row, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, this bill is fundamentally about community. Members have said, why can't you just open without alcohol? Well, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, that most of us actually do responsibly enjoy alcohol, and most of the licensed premises have their licence on the basis that they cannot open if their primary activity is to serve alcohol. Then they must serve alcohol. They must be allowed to serve alcohol when they open. So they are one and the same. That does not necessarily mean that what they are going to do is serve excessive alcohol. In fact, I predict that what will happen is that the overwhelming majority of people will come out early in the morning for breakfast and a coffee, maybe a lemonade or a shandy, and maybe a pint of beer. And the question for the opponents of this bill is, why should law-abiding, responsible New Zealanders not be able to do that? Rather than the question the opponents would like us to answer is, how will you justify yourselves to us? Mr. Speaker, this is fundamentally about individual freedom and personal responsibility. And what the opponents have done is taken a very cynical bet. They're a little bit like an opposition party I once heard when they were learning of bad news for the country, and they said, "Good grief, it's even worse than we hoped." The opposition to this bill have taken the cynical position that if there is an unfortunate occurrence that coincides with the Rugby World Cup in this bill, and if there is an unfortunate occurrence that may or may not have been caused by this bill, they will be in a position to say, "I told you so." It is cynical and dirty politics to do that, Mr. Speaker. What I hope is that we are going to have a warm, communitarian, festival event where we're able to use our community facilities, our pubs and our clubs, coming together as free and responsible New Zealanders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call Jackie Dean.